Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast here on YouTube. I'm your host, Andy Herman. If you don't already follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at Andy Herman NFL. And as always, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join me as I always discuss Packers football every day, 365 days a year here on YouTube. Oh, by the way, if you haven't subscribed yet, please also make sure to do that. But I figured I'd do something a little bit different today. I haven't given you guys the opportunity to maybe ask some questions and have me respond to them. It's been a little bit of an interesting week. It seems like forever ago that the Packers played on Thursday Night Football in what was a rather nondescript game against the 49ers. Now they have another game that's probably not going to exactly shatter any ratings records with the Packers and Jaguars coming up this Sunday. So I figured while we're kind of transitioning between those two kind of somewhat dull games, I figured I'd let you guys ask some questions on Twitter and have me answer them here on YouTube. So let's kick things off right away. I'll get to as many as I possibly can over the course of the next 10 minutes or so. And then maybe I'll save a couple of them for either next week or as time goes on here. But the first question I got was actually the one I want to dig into the most because I actually think it's the most intriguing and the most interesting. It came from Tommy Evans Barton, and he said, "What's the linebacker rotation look like when everyone's healthy?" And I think this is one of those really interesting questions that's going to be worth looking at as the rest of this season goes along. Christian Kirksey, of course, they signed in free agency, is expected to be that long-term starter. The knock on Kirksey, of course, was that he's injury prone. That's sort of come to fruition. And if we're being fair, didn't really look all that great in the first few weeks that he was in there. I do think this is somebody who maybe needed a little bit of time to get his legs back underneath him. Basically didn't play all of last year, then no preseason. So I think it was going to take some time, and now he probably has another ramp-up period before he gets comfortable in that defense. And again, just kind of gets his legs underneath him. So you have Christian Kirksey, and then you have Chris Barnes, who was the starter week one, really impressed the first few weeks. And if we're being honest as well, I think he's kind of come back to earth just a little bit. I don't think he's necessarily played bad, but I think you've definitely seen some of those rookie mistakes, and you can see some of the reasons why maybe he never should have been an undrafted free agent. Definitely should have been a drafted player based on what we've seen this year. But you can see why maybe scouts haven't been or weren't maybe the highest on him coming out of the draft. Struggled more the last couple weeks, staying within his gaps, playing assignments, assignment sound football. Those are a couple of things that I've kind of seen on tape that I think he needs to get cleaned up a little bit, but still an interesting player that still has a lot of upside for this defense. Kamal Martin comes back, looks good for a couple weeks, has the COVID issue, and now, how do you want to get him back involved with everything? Ty Summers has played, Oren Burks has played, and actually quietly had a really nice week against the San Francisco 49ers. Had a really nice grade, as I mentioned a couple shows ago, basically kind of blew one coverage towards the end of that game. Otherwise, he would have had probably my highest grade of anyone on defense, which was really something. He really played a really nice game. And then, you've got players like Raven Green and Will Redmond who have shown the ability to move down in the box and play some of that hybrid linebacker role as well. So how do you kind of figure all of that out and get a solid rotation where you're getting snaps for players and putting them in the best situation to succeed? If I had to guess, and honestly, this is probably what I would do as well, and I think this is what they're going to do, but again, we'll have to kind of wait and see a little bit. I think Christian Kirksey gets his job back as kind of that every down linebacker. I think him being able to call the plays and kind of get everyone in their right spots, he's very assignment sure. I don't think that you're looking for that player in the middle of the Packers defense maybe to be, the playmaker, the be-all, end-all. You're really hoping that the Smiths and Kenny Clark and Jair Alexander and those safeties, those are the guys that are going to be the playmakers. I think Christian Kirksey just needs to be kind of that glue that kind of gets everything together, make sure that everyone's on the same page, that everyone's in their right gaps, that they know what defense is being called. And I think for the most part, guys like Ty Summers and Chris Barnes have done an okay job at that, but I just think you get a little bit of a different level of it with Christian Kirksey in there. And then I think you're going to see a platoon at that other spot between Kamal Martin and Raven Green. I think on early downs, if you want an extra linebacker in there, I think Kamal Martin will be Christian Kirksey's running mate. And then I think on later downs, on passing downs, I think you're going to see Raven Green continue to assume that role as kind of that hybrid linebacker position. And I think those are the three that you're going to see most often. It wouldn't surprise me if you saw Chris Barnes from time to time as a rotational player who maybe has some specific situations or sets that he's able to get in. And even the same for Oren Burks. I think whether they continue to use him as a little bit of an edge player or kind of that nickel linebacker, they've kind of tended to use Oren Burks here and there as like an intermediary, between, like last year was between Antonio Morrison, who was just a pure run stuffer, and then you had Raven Green, who was, of course, your dime nickel pass defender only. Oren Burks was kind of the middle ground between those two, where he's a bigger, more physical linebacker than Raven Green, but he can cover better than an Antonio Morrison, or maybe like a Kamal Martin or a Chris Barnes or someone like that. So it wouldn't shock me if Burks gets some snaps like that as well. But my guess is the main trio that you're going to see is going to be, again, Kirksey, Raven Green, and Kamal Martin as that main group. I just think that group has the most upside overall. And I think, again, with Kirksey's knowledge and ability to call the plays, Raven Green's ability to cover and kind of do everything that you want that hybrid linebacker to do, and then Kamal Martin is more the run stuffing, kind of filling that Antonio Morrison role, but in a much more physical, much more fleet of foot way. I think that's the best case scenario for this Packers linebacker group going forward. Ryan Jimenez asks, is Josh Jackson turning a corner? I'm assuming no pun on words there, Ryan, but personally, I know people have different feelings on this. Aaron Nagler asked me about this week on his Let's Talk Football and Cheesehead TV. I had a couple of radio shows that asked me this as well. Personally, I don't think so. I think this is mostly the same Josh Jackson, maybe with a little bit of an improvement, but I still think this is somebody that panics when the ball comes his way. We've seen the penalties still rack up. We've seen him, not be able to keep his hands to himself, for lack of a better term. When the ball, kind of comes his way, he gets very, very grabby and he kind of panics at the end. The pass interference against the 49ers, is just him getting there a step too early. It just seems like he can't calm himself down and not panic when the ball comes his way, and that is a major concern. You also go back the last 3 weeks. Mike Penton, is using that 3-man rush in, kind of an 8-man defense, in pass defense, in the end zone, in the red zone situations. And in 3 straight weeks, Josh Jackson has been kind of the guy that's blown that sort of philosophy. So 3 weeks ago, he had the play in the back of the end zone where he gave up a touchdown to Tampa Bay, and he kind of was the one who blew that coverage. And then 2 weeks ago against Minnesota, he had the penalty in that situation on 3rd and 7 or 3rd and goal from the 7. His penalty forced them to get a 1st and goal, and they were able to punch in a touchdown from there. And then this last week, the River Craycraft ultimately dropped the ball, but that was almost another touchdown in an 8-man coverage with Josh Jackson in coverage. So in 3 straight weeks, he's in that situation. Basically was the person who kind of blew it in all 3 situations, was lucky in this last week that River Craycraft dropped the ball. Otherwise, that's 2 touchdowns and a pass interference penalty in those situations. So I think Josh Jackson has a ways to go. I think that's why you see the Packers playing so much zone defense the last few weeks with Kevin King out. I think they trust Josh Jackson more in zone coverage. They've played an absolute ton of it, almost no man coverage the last few weeks. And I just think ultimately Kevin King, when he gets back, is going to give you a much better matchup. I think Josh Jackson's a really nice number 4 corner, and I think he's proved that. And ultimately, the stats haven't been too bad. I think when he gets up against better wide receivers, he has the potential to be exposed. I hope I'm wrong. I still think he has a ton of talent, but I think for the most part, this is kind of the same Josh Jackson. Kyle Hoffenbecker asks, which team do I not want to see in the playoffs? It's really interesting, Kyle. I don't think that there's a team that Green Bay should be afraid of. I think Tampa obviously is one that, is going to, give you notice because of what they did in the previous game. They beat New Orleans already. Seattle, I think, I don't know if they were a better team a season ago, but I think it's very equal. I think they're better on offense this year, but way worse on defense. And I think Seattle's defense right now is a major concern. Green Bay should have no issues going up and down the field against Seattle's defense. The Rams are interesting. I still think that team has flaws too. Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, they have some pieces on defense that can give you a lot of problems. Sean McVay on offense. But I still think that that's a game that Green Bay maybe not easily can win, but they can definitely win. I'm not sure Arizona's quite there yet as like the team to beat in the NFC. So it's interesting that I'm not excited about any of these matchups. All of those teams I just named, Tampa, New Orleans, Seattle, the Rams, all Arizona, all those teams can beat Green Bay in the playoffs if they don't have their A game on. And in that way, I think it's going to be a really tough NFC, playoff picture. And I think it's why it's so important to get that 1 seed in the bye. But at the same token, I think Green Bay can win any of those games. And if they're the home team, I'm not sure that they're not favored in every single one of those games. So there's not any team that I fear, but at the same token, they can lose to any of those teams if they don't have their A game. All right, a couple more here. Nath Packers asks, one player on each side of the ball that could be used better. Oh, this is a really interesting question. I want to see more out of Tyler Ervin on the offensive side. I don't know that they're using him wrong, but I think you saw in that game against the San Francisco 49ers where he has some ability to give you a little bit more. I think he can be so dangerous in space, and that's kind of a player that, whether it's at running back, receiver, I just want to see him get his hands on the ball a little bit more, because I think maybe he's a little bit more dynamic than what he's getting credit for and how many times he's touching the ball each game. I know there's a log jam at that running back position, but again, I want to see Tyler Ervin more, and definitely would love to see him back on punt return and kick return. I know it's just a health thing right now, but hopefully he can get back there sooner rather than later. On the defensive side of the ball, I want to see a little bit more Montravius Adams, and I'm still wary in saying that because he's kind of burnt us before, but I'm excited. He played well against San Francisco in extended snaps. He's had about 3 or 4 weeks of splash plays, and just think it's ready to unveil him and see what he can do in a little bit of a larger role. And at this point along the defensive line, I don't think you have too much to lose. A couple more quick ones. Robin Not Williams asks, is this the best offensive line since the Lombardi era? I don't think so. I am very partial to the Chad Clifton, Marco Rivera, Mike Wall. I think it was Mike Flanagan. I forget the blurred lines between Mike Flanagan and Scott Walls in there, but I'm pretty sure it was Mike Flanagan. In fact, I know it is. And then right tackle Mark Tauscher. I think that group of 5 with Amon Green running behind him was probably one of my favorite offensive lines to watch. I don't think this one is quite the current version is quite to that level yet. However, this version is a lot deeper. So it's a really damn good offensive line, and they've been playing great all season. All right, I think I got to end it there. We're running a little bit long again, so thank you so much for your questions. For those of you who asked questions but I didn't get to them, I'll try to answer them maybe in the next couple episodes or maybe next week at some point. Thank you so much for following along. I greatly appreciate all of you. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcasts. Make sure to check out Andrew and Kyle today wherever you get your favorite podcasts. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.